So here I have my fabric on a fold, and that is my starting line, my bust point line, my nipple point line, my under bust line, and the hem is my waistline, okay, or half blouse. Okay, so now at my nipple point and at my under bust point, I step my measurement down by half an inch on both my nipple point and under bust point measurement. So my nipple point is 9.5 inches, I mark 10 inches. My under bust point is 13.5 inches, I mark 14 inches. And this is because I'm cutting directly on the fabric. Okay, so now to start this tutorial, remember that this is a freehand way of cutting your princess dart bustier. Okay, so from the middle I took my neck width at 4 inches and my neck depth at 4 inches. Okay, I wanted to keep it simple, so 4 by 4, and then I went ahead to draw my neckline. Okay, so now after drawing my neckline, I marked my shoulder point at 8.5 inches. So after marking my shoulder point at 8.5 inches, at my bust point, I also marked my shoulder point at 8.5 inches, and I drew a straight line. Some people, if they have like a very steady hand that can draw straight line, they don't need to mark it at the bust point. But me, my hand is shaky, shaky, so I always mark it. Okay, so at my shoulder point, I came down by half an inch, and I did this so that I can shape my shoulder line, because you guys know our shoulders are not straight. So I came down by half an inch and I shaped my shoulder line. Now the distance between the shoulder point and the bust point is 8 inches, so half is 4 inches. So I marked 4 inches and I came in by half an inch. And at my bust point, I mark circumference of my bust divided by 4. So you now, you mark circumference of your own bust divided by 4. And mine is 9.5 inches. Okay. So after marking this, the next thing I went ahead to do was to insert my armhole. Okay, my armhole curve. I went ahead to insert it. Okay, so now we have our armhole curve inserted. It is time for the princess dart bustier. Okay. So now for the bustier, the first thing you will do is your nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2 plus half an inch. So my nipple to nipple measurement is 8 inches divided by 2, that's 4, plus half an inch, that is 4.5 inches. So I mark 4.5 inches at the hem, I mark 4.5 inches at my under bust point, I mark 4.5 inches at my nipple point. Okay. So after doing all these markings, the next thing I went ahead to do was to connect my markings with a straight line. Okay. So see you guys, sewing has a lot to do with mathematics. So you need ruler and you need your calculation to be on point. Okay. So now after doing this, at the hem, I took one at the hem at my and at my under bust point, I took 1 inch on both sides. So 1 inch on both sides at my under bust point, 1 inch on both sides at the hem. And the reason I'm taking 1 inch is because I want to carve out my bustier. Some of you call it under bust tightening. Me, I don't know what tightening is. I'm just joking, but this is the term I use. Okay. So now after drawing a straight line, the next thing I went ahead to do was to connect my under bust point to my maple point with a slanted line. Okay. So now after doing this, the next thing I went ahead to do, you see that place we came down by 4 inches at my arm at my shoulder point. I just went ahead to connect it to my nipple point. Okay. So this is how simple and easy it is to kickstart your princess dart bustier. So now at that my armhole point, I came down by 1 inch, and after coming down by 1 inch, I connected it back to my nipple point. Okay, you guys, cutting a princess dart bustier is very simple, and this is how to cut it. Okay, so I connected it back to my nipple point. After connecting it back to my nipple point, around the armhole, I made sure I extended the line outwards and I marked 1 inch. Okay, so after marking 1 inch, I connected it back to my bust measurement, because you guys know that when you sew your princess dart bustier, it will jump. So this is why the extension by 1 inch is needed. So I extended it back and I connected it to my I extended it out and I connected it back to my bust measurement. Okay, so now the distance between those 2 points, you're going to add it back to your measurement, because you guys know we're cutting it out and we need our bust measurement to be accurate. Okay, so at my under bust point, I took circumference of my under bust divided by 4, I marked it, then distance between those 2 points, I added it back. Okay, and same thing at my waistline, I took circumference of my waist divided by 4. My waist is 32, so divided by 4, that is 8, and the distance between those 2 points, I added it back. Same thing I did for my under bust. Circumference of my under bust is 32, so divided by 4, that is 8. Okay, so now after doing all this, the next thing I went ahead to do was to connect all my markings together, and this is what we have here. Now the next thing I went ahead to do now was to add sewing allowance. Now I would advise you add at least 2.5 inches sewing allowance when you are doing freehand. Okay, so here now I added Z 1.5, I think 1.5 inch or more. I was gambling. Okay, now so at my neckline, I extended the line upwards. After extending it upwards, I went ahead to add 1 cm joining allowance for my shoulder line. Okay, see, I'm teaching you guys advanced stuff. I added joining allowance at my shoulder line, and you guys, this is how easy it is to draft the front part of a Princess Dart Bustier. So I drafted on the lining first so people can see it, bright and clear. So I just grabbed my main piece and I placed it on under the lining and I went ahead to cut. You want to make sure that it is well aligned, and you also want to make sure that you are cutting on a fold. Okay, so after cutting, ladies and gentlemen, this is what the front part of a Princess Dart Bustier looks like. Very simple, very straightforward. There's no plenty drama. Okay, so this is what the front part looks like. You want to make sure you target center front, side front. This is the lining as well. Now it is time for the back part. So that is my starting line at the back part. That is my bust point line. This is my nipple point line. My from I was just trying to tell you that from my shoulder to my nipple point line is just same thing for the front. My under bust point line and the hem is my waistline. So the first thing I went ahead to do was to mark out 1 inch for my zip allowance, and then I went ahead to mark 1 inch for my neck depth and 4 inches for my neck width. You also want to keep the 1 inch mark straight at your zip allowance, okay? Which is what I went ahead to do here. So now after doing this, I went ahead to connect my neckline. So I extended my tape backward and I marked my shoulder point. You want to make sure you're starting from that zip allowance line, okay? I marked my shoulder point at 8.5 inches. You now you're going to mark your own shoulder point, okay? And then I drew a straight line. I connected it to my bust point. Then I went ahead to mark circumference of my bust divided by 4, which is 9.5 inches. So at my shoulder line, I stepped it down by half an inch, just like I did for the front. I stepped it down by half an inch because our shoulder lines are not straight, okay? And then I marked half the distance between the shoulder line and the bust line is 8 inches. So I came down by half the measurement, which is 4 inches. I went ahead to insert my armhole curve. Okay, so this is what we have here. Now for my dart line, I went ahead to mark 4.5 inches, just like we did for the front. I marked 4.5 inches at my waistline, at my under bust line, and at my nipple point, and then I drew a straight line. Okay, so I connected my armhole to that my dart line. Now after connecting my armhole to the dart line, the next thing I went ahead to do was to mark half an inch. Okay, now you're going to keep this half an inch steady till you get to the armhole. Okay, because you guys know that the back is not exactly straight, so you want to kind of contour the you want to kind yes, that's my baby, so you want to kind of contour the princess that's at the back so that it gets rid of the fold and the grooves we have at the back. So now at my waistline I marked half an inch, but around my armhole I came down by about 1 cm. Okay, some people keep it, sometimes I keep it at 1 inch, as in sometimes I keep it at half an inch all through. Sometimes I do half an inch at my waistline, which is the hem, and half an inch at my armhole line. Just do what works for you. Okay, so now after extending my armhole line by half an inch, I just went ahead to connect it back to my bust measurement. Okay, so now the distance between those 2 points, you guys know that we are going to add it back to our general measurement so that everything will be accurate. Okay, so now I marked circumference of my under bust divided by 4. I marked it. I marked circumference of my waist divided by 4. I marked it, and I add the distance between those 2 points because you guys know that we are going to shape it out. Okay, so which is what I did here. Okay, so I just connected all my markings together. After connecting all my markings together, I went ahead to add sewing allowance. Like I said, if you are doing freehand, add at least 2.5 inches, so you don't cry premium tears like me. Okay, so I connected all my markings together, and this is what we have here for the back part. Before then, you I forgot to tell you guys that you need to add joining allowance at at the shoulder line. Okay, me too, when I was doing this tutorial I almost forgot, so I added 1 cm joining allowance at my shoulder line, and I connected everything together. So this is what we have here for the back part. And just like we did for the front part, I grabbed the main fabric, because this one is a lining piece, and I made sure everything was well aligned, and I just went ahead to cut. Okay, you guys, if my voice is sounding very low, it's because I have a flu. I have a flu and my nose is runny. I'm coughing. I have a flu, so just bear with me, okay? Bear with me. Yeah, so I just went ahead to cut. I decided to show you guys the cutting process so you know where to cut and where to leave. So you want to make sure that you tag it, okay? Get rid of the pins, tag it center front, center back. I don't know. I keep calling back front, okay? I tagged it the back pieces, okay? And I also did same thing for this is the lining piece. I also did same thing for the main piece, okay? So after tagging the lining piece, I also went ahead to tag the main piece. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the easiest way, the simplest way, and the fastest way to cut your very own princess dart bustier, both for the front and the normal dart for the back.